Have you ever looked at someone you love and realized, you don't speak the same language anymore, not words, but hearts? This video isn't about perfect love. It's about real love, the kind that breaks, bends, and somehow still breathes. Today, through a simple Danish love story called, When I Do Became, we'll try, you'll practice English slowly, clearly, and deeply, while discovering what truly makes love stronger when forever starts to fade. A quiet morning in Aarhus. The morning sun rose softly over Aarhus, painting the cobblestone streets with golden light. The air smelled faintly of rain and warm bread. Inside a tiny corner bakery called Second Chances, Emma wiped the counter with gentle hands, humming a quiet Danish tune. Outside, bicycles rolled past and seagulls called from the harbor. Another ordinary day beginning in Denmark, but for Emma, no morning was ever truly ordinary. Every loaf of bread she baked carried a story, her own, and those of the people who found their way into her shop. She used to be an office worker, typing reports and sending emails she didn't care about. Until one day, after losing her job and her confidence, she found herself kneading dough at midnight just to stop herself from crying. That was how the bakery began, not from a dream, but from heartbreak. Now, years later, Second Chances had become more than a bakery. It was a quiet refuge for anyone who had fallen, failed, or simply needed a warm place to sit and breathe. The customers didn't come just for the bread. They came for the feeling that life could still be kind. As Emma placed the first tray of cinnamon rolls in the display, she whispered to herself, "Fresh starts smell like this." The bell above the door jingled. Another day. Another story. Another second chance waiting to be told. Emma's secret recipe. Emma's hands moved like music, steady, calm, almost like they remembered what her heart had forgotten. Every morning, she followed the same rhythm: mix, knead, rest, bake. But what made her bread special wasn't in the flour or the butter. It was in something invisible, the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, things could still turn out right. Years ago, when Emma first opened Second Chances, she had nothing but a second-hand oven and a notebook full of crossed-out recipes. Her first weeks were chaos. The bread was too hard, the cakes too sweet, and the bills too high. People walked past her shop without looking. Some laughed when they saw her sign, Second Chances Bakery. "Who wants old bread?" they joked, but Emma never gave up. Every mistake became a lesson, every failure a new ingredient. She learned that bread, like people, needs patience. Too much pressure and it collapses. Too little warmth and it never rises. And when she finally found the balance, she wrote it down on a piece of paper and taped it to her wall. It said, "Secret recipe, kindness, time, and courage." That was her magic, not in taste, but in meaning. When customers took their first bite, they felt something gentle inside, as if the bread itself whispered, "It's okay to start again." That morning, as Emma took a loaf from the oven, she smiled softly. The crust cracked just right, golden, warm, perfect. But she wasn't proud of the bread. She was proud of the fact that she was still here, baking, believing, trying again. Because every loaf was a reminder, failure doesn't end you, it feeds you. Jonas and the burnt bread. Jonas had only worked at second chances for 3 days when disaster struck. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, too quiet, and the smell of something burning began to crawl through the bakery. Emma rushed to the oven, opened it, and stared. Inside, 20 loaves of perfectly ruined bread. Black as midnight. Smoke curled up like ghosts of good intentions. Jonas froze. His face turned red, then pale, then red again. I forgot to set the timer," he stammered. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I'll pay for the flour, but Emma didn't yell. She didn't sigh or scold. She just took out the tray, looked at the burnt bread for a long moment, and smiled, a real smile. "Jonas," she said softly, "do you know what the secret of good bread is?" Jonas shook his head, still panicking. "It's forgiving yourself before the next batch." He blinked, confused. "Even when you burn everything?" "Especially then," she said. Instead of throwing the loaves away, Emma sliced one open. Surprisingly, the inside was still soft. She spread a bit of butter on it and handed it to Jonas. "Taste it." He hesitated, then took a bite. It wasn't perfect, a little smoky, a little bitter, but strangely good. He laughed nervously. "It's not awful." Emma nodded. "Mistakes aren't awful either. They just need a little butter." That day, Jonas learned more than baking. He learned that people, like bread, could still be good on the inside, even after being burnt by life. And for the first time in a long time, he smiled without forcing it. Outside, the morning sun brightened the window. The burnt smell slowly faded, replaced by something new, the quiet warmth of understanding. The old man and the cinnamon roll. Every morning at exactly 8:30, an old man named Henrik walked slowly to second chances. His gray hat tilted slightly to one side, his coat buttoned wrong at the top. He never said much. Just nodded, smiled faintly, and ordered the same thing, one cinnamon roll, one black coffee. Then he would sit by the window, always the same table, and stare outside as if waiting for someone who never came. A tea first. Emma thought nothing of it. Many customers liked routine. But there was something different about Henrik. He always brought a small, folded napkin, placed it gently on the other side of the table, and set the extra fork there. It was as if he wasn't eating alone. Jonas noticed it too. "Who's the other fork for?" he whispered one morning. Emma smiled softly but didn't answer. She'd learned that some stories unfold only when they're ready. Days passed. Rain, wind, sunshine, and Henrik kept coming. He would look at the cinnamon roll before eating, close his eyes for a moment, then whisper something under his breath. His eyes always glistened, but he never cried. Until one day, when Emma finally walked over and gently asked, "Do you mind if I sit with you?" Henrik looked surprised but nodded. For a while, they sat in silence. Then he said quietly, "My wife used to love your cinnamon rolls. Every morning, we'd share one here. She passed away last winter. I tried staying home, but the silence there is louder than anything." Emma's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. She just broke a cinnamon roll in half and handed it to him. He smiled weakly. "It still tastes the same," he said. "Sweet, but with a little ache in it." Emma looked down at her own half. "Maybe that's how we know something's real, when it's sweet and sad." Henrik nodded. "Maybe that's how love works too." After that day, the empty chair by Henrik's table didn't seem so lonely anymore. Sometimes Jonas joined him for coffee. Sometimes other customers sat there, sharing stories of their own. Somehow, the cinnamon roll became more than a pastry. It became a memory passed from one heart to another, and every morning, as Emma watched Henrik walk down the street, she whispered to herself, "Some second chances don't come as new beginnings. They come as the courage to remember." Outside, the Danish sky stretched wide and soft. Inside, the smell of cinnamon lingered, warm, comforting, a little sad, and completely alive. When it rains in Denmark. Rain in Denmark has a certain mood, not loud or dramatic, just quiet and steady, like someone softly tapping on the world's shoulder to remind it to slow down. That morning, the sky over Aarhus was gray and thoughtful. The streets shimmered with puddles, and people hurried past with umbrellas, faces half hidden behind scarves. Inside second chances, the bell above the door jingled more often than usual. People rushed in, shaking off droplets, filling the air with the smell of wet coats and freshly baked bread. Emma smiled as she handed out napkins and mugs of coffee. Rain always made the bakery feel smaller, warmer, as if the whole world was squeezing itself into that tiny room to stay dry. Jonas was wiping the counter when a teenage girl walked in, drenched from head to toe, holding a small paper bag protectively against her chest. "Sorry," she said, shivering. "Do you mind if I sit here for a bit?" "Of course," Emma said. "Sit anywhere you like." The girl took a corner seat by the window, carefully placing her soggy bag on the table. Jonas brought her a towel and a cup of cocoa. After a while, curiosity got the better of him. "What's in the bag?" he asked, half smiling. The girl hesitated, then opened it slightly. Inside was a loaf of bread, cold, uneven, clearly homemade. "It's my first try," she said shyly. "It didn't turn out well. I was going to throw it away, but then the rain started." Emma walked over, her eyes kind. "May I?" she asked. The girl nodded. Emma broke a small piece, tasted it slowly, and smiled. "It's not bad at all. A little too much salt maybe, but it has heart." The girl blinked, surprised. "You think so?" Emma nodded. "Bread doesn't care how it looks. It only cares that you tried." The girl laughed quietly, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "My mom used to say that before she left." Her voice trembled a little, but she smiled again. "Maybe I'll try again tomorrow." As the rain kept falling, the bakery filled with stories. Henrik shared memories of his wife. A young couple at another table talked about moving in together. An old teacher corrected Jonas's Danish pronunciation between bites of rye bread. Everyone seemed to soften, Like the rain had washed away their worries for a while, Emma looked around and felt something shift inside her. This little bakery, born from her own failure, had somehow become a shelter, not just from the weather, but from loneliness. It wasn't the bread or the coffee that brought people in. It was the quiet permission to be human, to be flawed, and still be welcomed. As the day faded, the rain finally stopped. The sky opened just enough for a ray of golden light to slip through the clouds. It hit the window where droplets sparkled like tiny stars. Emma stood there, watching the reflection of her customers, laughing, talking, living, and whispered to herself, maybe storms aren't here to ruin things. Maybe they're here to make the world smell fresh again. Jonas looked up from wiping the counter. "What did you say, Emma?" She smiled. "Nothing, Jonas. Just thinking how beautiful the rain tastes." And in that little bakery, under the gray Danish sky, the scent of second chances mixed with cinnamon, cocoa, and quiet laughter, soft proof that warmth doesn't always come from the oven. The letter by the window. The next morning, the world outside the bakery looked freshly washed. The air was crisp, the sky pale blue, and the cobblestones still glistening from yesterday's rain. Emma opened the shop early, as she always did, to prepare the morning loaves. But something unusual caught her eye, a small corner of yellowed paper peeking out from behind the window frame. At first, she thought it was just an old receipt or an advertisement that had slipped in with the wind. But when she gently pulled it out, she realized it was a letter, folded carefully, tied with a thin red string. The paper smelled faintly of flour and cinnamon. On the front, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "For whoever still believes in second chances." Emma's heart skipped. She untied the string, unfolded the paper, and began to read. "Dear Baker, I don't know if this place still exists, or if anyone will ever find this. Years ago, I worked here, not as a baker, but as a boy trying to find his way. I was 16, angry at everything, convinced the world had already decided who I was. One day, after breaking something valuable, I ran away. I never said sorry, but this bakery changed me. It taught me what patience tastes like. It taught me that kindness is not weakness, it's warmth. If you're reading this, thank you. For keeping the ovens warm. For keeping hope alive. From a boy who once burnt the bread, but learned to bake again." Emma stood there for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly. The letter felt alive, like a whisper from the past, like proof that what she'd built truly mattered. She wondered if the boy might have been someone she knew, maybe one of her old helpers before Jonas, or perhaps a stranger who'd simply passed through and found comfort here. When Jonas arrived, she showed him the letter. He read it quietly, eyes softening with each line. "Do you think he's still around?" he asked. Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But his words are." She placed the letter in a small wooden frame and hung it near the window where the morning light could touch it. Beneath it, she wrote in Danish, "Everyone deserves another try." For the rest of the day, customers noticed the letter. Some read it silently, some smiled, one woman even wiped away a tear. It became a quiet part of the bakery, a story within a story, a reminder that no good act ever disappears completely. That night, after closing, Emma sat by the window with a cup of tea. The streets were empty, but the bakery still smelled of sugar and warmth. She thought of the people who had walked through her doors: Henrik, the girl with the salty bread, Jonas with his burnt loaves, and now this mysterious boy from the past. Each of them, she realized, had left something behind, a piece of their heart, mixed into the walls and the flour dust on the counter. Maybe that was the real secret ingredient all along, the quiet proof that when life gives you a second chance, you leave a bit of it for someone else to find. She smiled softly, tracing the edge of the letter with her fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. Outside, a gentle wind brushed against the window, almost like the world itself was answering. Do second chances taste sweeter? By now, Second Chances wasn't just a bakery, it was a heartbeat. Every day, new faces came in, and every loaf seemed to carry a story baked into its crust. Jonas had changed too. His hands were steadier now, his smile easier, his voice more confident when greeting customers in both Danish and English. Yet deep inside, he still doubted himself, the same quiet voice whispering, "You'll mess up again." That morning, as Emma prepared the dough, Jonas leaned against the counter, thinking aloud. "Emma," he said softly, "do you ever wonder if people like us really deserve a second chance?" Emma paused, dusting flour off her hands. "Every day," she said. "But I stopped waiting for someone to give me one. I started baking my own." Jonas chuckled. "So, like bread?" "Exactly," she smiled. "You knead it, shape it, and let it rise. It takes time, warmth, and patience. Just like healing." He nodded, but his expression stayed thoughtful. Later that day, when a rush of customers came in, Jonas accidentally dropped an entire tray of croissants. They hit the floor like soft, buttery tragedies. The room went silent for a moment, and then Emma laughed. Not mockingly, but gently, like rain tapping on a window. "It's okay," she said, kneeling to help. "You can't make something new if you're afraid of dropping the old batch." The customers laughed too, and Jonas felt his embarrassment melt into something warmer. That night, after closing, he stayed behind to bake another tray, not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could. The air filled with the smell of butter and hope. When the croissants came out of the oven, golden and perfect, he took one, broke it in half, and brought it to Emma. "Here," he said shyly. "Try this." She took a bite, eyes closing for a moment. Then she smiled, a real, glowing smile. "You did it, Jonas." He looked at her, uncertain. "It tastes better than before." "Of course it does," she said. "Second chances always do." Jonas sat down, still holding half the croissant. The bakery was quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. He thought about everything that had happened, the burnt bread, the rain, Henrik's stories, the letter in the window. Somehow, they all tasted like this, a little sweet, a little sad, perfectly real. Maybe that was the secret no recipe could capture, that the best things in life come after mistakes, not before them. Maybe sweet isn't the opposite of bitter at all, but the result of surviving it that he took another bite, smiling to himself. Outside, the Danish night stretched calm and blue, and through the glass, he could see the reflection of the bakery sign glowing softly. Second chances. For the first time, Jonas understood what those words really meant. Not a place, not even a dream, but a promise that no one is too broken to rise again. A new morning, a new batch. The next morning, the sky over Aarhus was painted in soft gold, and the air outside the bakery felt crisp and new, like the world itself had been baked fresh overnight. Emma unlocked the door as the first rays of sunlight touched the sign, Second Chances Bakery. The letters seemed to shimmer as if whispering, "Here, every day begins again." Inside, Jonas was already at the counter, flour on his hands, a focused look on his face. He had arrived earlier than usual, not out of duty, but from a quiet excitement to start the day. When Emma walked in, he grinned. "I made a new recipe," he said. "It's not perfect yet, but it feels right." She smiled. "Then it's already halfway there." The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air again, soft, warm, and comforting, the kind of smell that makes you believe everything will be okay. The customers started to arrive. Henrik, with his usual cinnamon roll and an extra fork, now used to share with whoever sat beside him. The young girl with the salty bread returned too, proudly carrying a new loaf she had baked, and this time, it looked beautiful. The bakery hummed with quiet laughter and soft conversation. Every corner of the small shop seemed alive with stories, of people who had stumbled, fallen, and somehow found their way back up again. Emma watched them all, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and tenderness. "Funny, isn't it?" she said to Jonas. "How people think bakeries are about bread." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "They're not." She laughed. "No. They're about beginnings." For a while, they stood there, side by side, looking out the window as the city slowly woke up. The letter by the window fluttered gently in the breeze, catching the morning light, a small, constant reminder that kindness leaves fingerprints even time can't erase. Emma turned back to her counter, pressing her palms into the soft dough. "You know," she said, "the thing about second chances is, they're not given. They're baked, a little bit of effort, a little bit of faith, and a lot of heat." Jonas nodded thoughtfully. "And sometimes," he added, "you burn a few before you get it right." She laughed, shaking her head. "Exactly." Outside, the sound of bicycles and church bells filled the air. Inside, the oven ticked softly, ready for a new batch. Everything smelled of butter, sugar, and new beginnings. As Emma slid the tray into the oven, she whispered the same words she did every morning, words no one ever heard but the bread, "Rise again," because that was what second chances was truly about. Not perfection, not success, but the simple, beautiful act of rising again. No matter how many times you've fallen. The bell above the door jingled, and a new customer stepped inside. Another story was about to begin. "Good morning," Emma said with a warm smile. "Welcome to Second Chances." And outside, the sun rose a little higher over Aarhus, golden, gentle, and full of promise.